Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Trudge, A Journey to Being Recovered. I am the host of the program. My name is Dexter. I'm a recovered drug addict alcoholic. And last week we started the chapter called Two Wives, chapter 8, I believe. And we got through the first couple pages. This week we're going to pick up exactly where we left off. We're going to start at the top of page 111 and the hopes of continuing on the spiritual experience and fulfilling everything that it entails to staying recovered. This chapter speaks very much in great detail of what it's like for a wife, what the wife had gone through back in the early 1930s, what a wife may go through now, what a husband could be going through now at the hands of his wife's drinking or drugging. It's absolutely very much applicable. So I hope everybody is well. Let's not waste much time. Let's get right to the work, as this is a long chapter. We'll probably not finish it today, but we'll definitely finish it next week. And then the week after that, we'll start the chapter called The Family Afterward. These alternative readings are very important while we have finished all 12 steps. The information that's in these next couple chapters, they can't be glossed over with a minimum of concern. And so, they're still part of the 164, so we're going to go through all of them in great detail. So let's open our book study like we open all our book studies. Start with the third step prayer, which is on page 63 for those of you who have not joined in the program till this point. If you have been doing this work with me to this point, it's highlighted pink. Pink stands for prayers. Let's go ahead and invite God in, and then let's get right to work, shall we? God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Thanks those of you who have joined in, and let's get back to the work. So, last week we finished up through page 110, and we talked about the 4 kinds of alcoholic husbands that the wives may have been encountering here. And on the top of page 111 is where we'll continue. It says the first principle of success is that you should never be angry as a wife who's dealing with a man, or a husband that's dealing with a wife of this capacity. That's really difficult when you have somebody who's, continuing to drink, engaging in derelict acts, the degradation is coming home, things of that nature. It says, even though your husband becomes unbearable and you should have to leave him temporarily, if you have to leave him temporarily, you should, if you can, go without rancor. So go without making a crazy mess of things. Go without the pandemonium that comes with the incessant fighting, arguing, maybe some violence that could occur, the domestic violence, the police being called. If you can go without the rancor, that's always going to be better for all people involved, especially if there are children. It says patience and good temper are most necessary. I have the word patience underlined. I'm going to say let's go ahead and highlight that last paragraph, that last sentence, orange. Patience and good temper are most necessary. Remember, we're dealing with a man or a woman that's sick, spiritually sick. Our next thought is that you should never tell him what he must do about his drinking. I went through a lot of that. You need to quit drinking. You need to go to AA. You need to go to NA. You should do. Okay? Many people who are in the program today, most of us who have recovered, know what that is like. If he gets the idea that you are a nag or a killjoy, your chance of accomplishing anything useful may be 0. Okay? This is going to be highlighted orange. It says he will use that excuse to drink more. I know I did. The last thing I needed to hear was the truth. I didn't need to hear I needed to stop drinking. I was drinking to escape. I was drinking because I liked the way it felt. I just didn't want to deal. And, my ex-wife's nagging made me want to drink more. The bills piling up made me want to drink more. I used alcohol as an escape. The book is very clear. We drink and drug for the effect that's produced. And a lot of times, a nagging wife or a nagging husband would just make us go to further extremes. He will tell you he is misunderstood. This may lead to lonely evenings for you. He may seek someone else to console him, not always another man. This is not something that is, This happens quite a bit. I mean, it was part of my story. It's part of a lot of people's stories, you know. There's always someone else who will understand besides a wife. Be determined that your husband's drinking is not going to spoil your relations with your children or your friends. They need your companionship and your help. It is possible to have a full and useful life, though your husband continues to drink. We know women who are unafraid, even happy under these conditions. Do not set your heart on reforming your husband. You may be unable to do so no matter how hard you try. Remember, no human power is going to fix that guy. You know, he's going to get the help that he needs when he is good and ready, and not a second before. You know, if he's not willing to go to any lengths to get sober and to be recovered and to work these steps and have a spiritual awakening, it's just not going to happen if he's a real alcoholic. Okay, if he's the man or the woman on page 21, you know, if he suffers from the bedevilments on page 52, you know, that spiritual malady, you know, if he's alcoholic 3, alcoholic number 4 on page 110 that we just read, there's virtually no shot of him getting well unless he's ready. Okay? We know these suggestions are sometimes difficult to follow, but you will save many a heartbreak if you can succeed in observing them. You know, and that's, I mean, it's just, some of it's like really unreasonable to think that like women are expected to do this. You know, when they have the debauchery of what follows their husbands around. I mean, their husbands are like tsunamis, you know, with their alcoholism, destroying everything in their path, you know, and for someone to have to be patient and have good temper, to go without rank, or I understand, and, you know, we understand that this is, you know, it's borderline unreasonable to expect. Maybe in 1939, in 2014, you know, this is going to be real hard to do for a wife. And I understand that, you know, today, what I put my ex-wife through and what many of the husbands have put their wives through, or the wives are putting their husbands through now. However, it will save you many a heartbreak if you can really stick to them and observe them, okay? Your husband may come to appreciate your reasonableness and patience. This may lay the groundwork for a friendly talk about his alcoholic problem. You know, my sponsor likes to say you'll get more bees with honey, you know, and it's true. You know, I mean, you can be in full on attack mode, yell, scream, and you'll probably not get as far as you would if you come from a place of love, understanding, you know, tolerance, you know, patience. You know, remembering that we're people who are spiritually sick will make all the difference. Try to have him bring up the subject himself. Be sure you are not critical during such a discussion. Attempt instead to put yourself in his place. Let him see that you want to be helpful rather than critical. I have the words helpful rather than critical highlighted in orange. That's what we want to be. Our only aim is to be of help here. You know, character assassination, you know, being critical, yelling, screaming, really not going to get anything but a fight started, okay? It's not going to do anything but set this whole thing in you know, aflames. When a discussion does arise, you might suggest he read this book. I have the words read this book highlighted. I mean, that's the first step in my estimation to, you know, a better way of life is just reading and understanding what's in this book. It's a difficult read at first, especially for somebody who may be jittery or befogged, you know, or, you know, borderline wet brain. You know, sometimes a definitive hospital or rehab stay is imminent before someone has their head cleared and can understand this book. But to read it first, get an idea of what's going on, and then be taught it by another man or woman who has been recovered from this illness, that's definitely the way to go. That's what worked for me. It says read this book, or at least the chapter on alcoholism. More on alcoholism is very, very clear, and it would be an absolute pertinent, chock full of information chapter for a man who is in that situation, the hopeless alcoholic, wanting to get help, not knowing what to do. Tell him you have been worried, though perhaps needlessly. You think he ought to know the subject better, as everyone should have a clear understanding of the risk he takes if he drinks too much. Show him you have confidence in his power to stop or moderate. Say you do not want to be a wet blanket, that you only want him to take care of his health. Okay, you're not trying to be a nag, you know, we just don't want you to die, you know. Thus, you may succeed in interesting him in alcoholism, okay. He probably has several alcoholics among his own acquaintances. You might suggest that you both take an interest in them. Drinkers like to help other drinkers. Your husband may be willing to talk to one of them. If this kind of approach does not catch your husband's interest, it may be best to just drop the subject, okay? But after a friendly talk, your husband will usually revive the topic himself. This may take patient waiting. The word patient, let's go ahead and circle that. But it will be worth it. Okay, you're just basically laying the groundwork. You're kind of just like dropping seeds in the hope that somewhere something will sprout with him. He'll bring the subject up himself, okay? Meanwhile, you might try to help the wife of another serious drinker, okay? Just, again, sprinkling in, helping others. Helping others doesn't just, go for the sick man in question. It's good. What's good for the husband can be good for the wife. This program of altruism, it has its advantages for all people involved. If you act upon these principles, your husband may stop or moderate. Suppose, however, that your husband fits the description of number 2. The same principles which apply to the husband number 1 should be practiced. But after his next binge, ask him if he would really like to get over his drinking for good. This is going to be highlighted orange. It says, do not ask that he do it for you or anyone else. Okay? Anyone that knows anything about this disease knows that it's not going to work unless you do it for you. Doing it for the courts, doing it for the police, doing it for your wife, doing it for your girlfriend, doing it to save your kids. I did a little bit of that, to not rock the boat, and for my son. Never worked until I did it for myself. Just, would he like to? So this whole next paragraph, I just put a big green star on it. Green stands for actions. Rather than highlight the whole thing, I just started up. It's going to tell you that this is what you need to do then, if that answer is yes as the wife. It says, the chances are he would. Show him a copy of this book and tell him what you have found out about alcoholism. Show him that as alcoholics, the writers of the book understand. Tell him some of the interesting stories you have read. If you think he will be shy of a spiritual remedy, ask him to look at the chapter on alcoholism. That's a powerful chapter for people trying to figure out if this is something that they want to do. Then perhaps he will be interested enough to continue. The next chapter is We Agnostics, and that really speaks to the spiritual experience. But you can't ever go wrong by getting that man to read more about alcoholism. I mean, that is the chapter that speaks in great detail about what he's afflicted with. If he is enthusiastic, your cooperation will mean a great deal. If he is lukewarm or thinks he is not an alcoholic, we suggest you leave him alone. Avoid urging him to follow our program. The seed has been planted in his mind. He knows that thousands of men, much like himself, have recovered. The word recovered is circled. But don't remind him of this after he has been drinking, for he may be angry. Nobody wants to nag a drunk. They blow up quick. Sooner or later, you may be likely to find him reading the book once more. Wait until repeated stumbling convinces him he must act. The rest of the sentence is going to be highlighted orange. It says, for the more you hurry him, the longer his recovery may be delayed. It's like, don't get in the way of someone else's bottom. Let this guy figure it out. Be patient. I mean, of course, there comes a point where you just can't take anymore and you may have to leave, and that may be what he needs. Who knows? But don't get in the way of letting that guy hit his bottom, okay? Because the more you nag, the more you push him, is the longer that recovery process may be delayed, okay? If you have a number 3 husband, you may be in luck. Being certain he wants to stop, you can go to him with this volume as joyfully as though you had struck oil or found like a bag of money, because all of a sudden he's ready and you're ready, okay? He may not share your enthusiasm, chances are he won't, okay? But he is practically sure to read this book, and he may go for the program at once. If he's that hopeless or that desperate to get well and is tired of living that spiritual death, he'll go for it right away, okay? I mean, when you're done, you're done. And you'll do anything, when you're that desperate. Desperation is a gift in this sense. When you get that desperate and you're willing to do anything to stop, you'll go for it, okay? If he does not, you will probably not have long to wait. Again, you should not crowd him. Let him decide for himself. Cheerfully see him through more sprees. Talk about his condition or this book only when he raises the issue. In some cases, it may be better to let someone outside the family present the book. Maybe another alcoholic, maybe someone he used to drink with that has now gotten well, started going to the program, is recovered, maybe a therapist, maybe a doctor. Okay, there's always a lot of different options. Maybe, somebody part of his clergy, maybe another, member of the congregation of the church you go to, if you, go to church, something like that. They can urge action without arousing hostility. Husband's always going to be mad at the wife when it comes down to this. It's just, he's going to be looking for someone to blame. But a neutral party may go over better. For me, it was a college counselor, and a series of psychotherapists, that helped me. If your husband is otherwise a normal individual, your chances are good at this stage. Just telling you have a pretty good shot here. You would suppose that men in the fourth classification would be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Our predecessors were all like that. They were all in that fourth category. They were all hopeless drug addicts and alcoholics. At their end, these men were like experiencing mania, being chained to beds. Bill Dotson was beating up nurses, drinking on the way home from the hospital. These men were losing their minds. Okay? Everybody had given them up. Defeat seemed certain. Yet, often such men had spectacular and powerful recoveries. And that's what happened, and that's why Alcoholics Anonymous is here today. That's why this book was written, because these men were pulled back from the gates of hell, due to having their spiritual experiences and taking what, Ebby Thatcher taught Bill, in the tenets of the Oxford groups, those first 6 steps, and then they created their own 12, and these men were detoxing half the time, having their spiritual awakenings, and these are people that no one thought would get well. Think of the person you know, or someone that knows that is just absolutely hopeless and destined to die at the hands of whatever substance it is, alcohol, drugs, meth, whatever it is, gambling. That person is never going to get well. That person's going to die. People like that were getting well regularly during the inception of this program. Top of page 114. There are exceptions. Some men have been so impaired by alcohol that they cannot stop. The wet brain varieties. It's an absolute tragic sight. Sometimes there are cases where alcoholism is complicated by other disorders. There may be schizophrenia, there may be bipolarism, there may be other things going on. A good doctor or psychiatrist can tell you whether these complications are serious. In any event, try to have your husband read this book. It's the bottom line. Try to get him to read this book, okay? And if not the whole book, get him to at least read the chapter on alcoholism, okay? His reaction may be one of enthusiasm. If he is already committed to an institution, but if he can convince you and your doctor that he means business, give him a chance to try our method. Unless the doctor thinks that his mental condition be too abnormal or dangerous. So this is where a licensed professional comes into play. Because many of us, have these issues. Not everyone's just an alcoholic. Some of us are cross-addicted. Some of us have medical concerns that need to be, diagnosed by a professional. We make this recommendation with some confidence. For years, we have been working with alcoholics committed to institutions. Since this book was first published, AA has released thousands of alcoholics from asylums and hospitals of every kind. The majority have never returned. I have this last part of the sentence highlighted orange. It says, "The power of God goes deep." And it does. Left to our own devices, this would have never happened. None of us would have ever gotten well. It's the power of God that has been the reason why these men have been released from these asylums and these rehabs and these hospitals. You may have the reverse situation on your hands. Perhaps you have a husband who is at large, but who should be committed. Some men cannot or will not get over alcoholism. When they become too dangerous, we think the kind of thing is to lock them up, but of course a good doctor should always be consulted. The wives and children of such men suffer horribly, but not more than the men themselves. So, I mean, everyone's taking a beating here, but the bottom line, the person suffering the most is the person in question, the alcoholic, the person who cannot put that drink down, okay? But sometimes you must start life anew. We know women who have done it. If such women adopt a spiritual way of life, their road will be smoother. Sometimes you have to leave. Sometimes you have to move on, and that's just been the story of many women throughout history who have suffered with drug addicted and alcoholic husbands, okay? That just weren't able to put this program together and get it. If your husband is a drinker, you probably worry over what other people are thinking, and you hate to meet your friends. You draw more and more into yourself, and you think everyone is talking about conditions at your home. You avoid the subject of drinking, even with your own parents. You do not know what to tell the children. When your husband is bad, you become a trembling recluse, wishing the telephone had never been invented. It's even worse now, okay, with the social media and people taking photographs and filming people. I mean, it just gets crazy nowadays in present day 2014 with, alcoholics, being out in public and things like that. We find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. While you need not discuss your husband at length, you can quietly let your friends know that the nature of his illness. But you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband, okay? So, you can talk about it. It's not for anything for you to be embarrassed about. He's sick. The stigma that is attached to addiction and alcoholism is an unfair stigma because it's no different a disease than like lupus or ALS or cancer. But most people choose not to see it as a disease. They see it as some kind of moral deficiency, as if we could stop if we wanted to. Truth of the matter is, until you're ever in the shoes of a drug addict or an alcoholic, you'll never really know what it's like to want to stop and not be able to stop. The doctor's opinion speaks to it in great detail. We are without defense against that first drink or drug. It's not that we don't want to stop, it's that we can't. Most people just don't understand the grave nature of alcoholism, and so it's treated unfairly in my estimation. When you have carefully explained to such people that he is a sick person, you will have created a new atmosphere. Barriers which have sprung up between you and your friends will disappear with the growth of sympathetic understanding. You will no longer be self-conscious or feel that you must apologize as though your husband were a weak character. It has nothing to do with the fact of how weak or how strong he is. He's sick. He may be anything but that. Your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially. Okay? Everybody's got baggage, man. Everybody's got things going on in their marriage, So your husband's an alcoholic. It's not your fault. You shouldn't have to carry that burden. It's not a cross for you to burn. He's spiritually sick, and if he wants to, you can help him get well by reading this chapter, understanding what alcoholism is about. The same principle applies with dealing with the children. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it is best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. Then that terrible tension which grips the home of every problem drinker will be lessened. Frequently, you have felt obliged to tell your husband's employer and his friends that he was sick, when, as a matter of fact, he was tight or he was drunk, okay? Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can. Whenever possible, let your husband explain. It's his deal. It's his job. Let him explain, Don't go around making excuses or telling lies to try to save your husband's job. Maybe losing that job is what needs to happen for him to get well. Now, obviously, nobody wants to be put in dire straits, but it takes what it takes, okay? Covering for him may delay the process. Your desire to protect him should not cause you to lie to people when they have a right to know where he is and what he's doing. He's supposed to be at work. Where is he? Discuss with him when he is sober and in good spirits. Ask him what you should do if he places you in such a position again. He's the one that put you in that spot. You know, you didn't put you there. He put you there. Find out what he wants you to do. But be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so, okay? So again, there's a way that we need to go about speaking to your husband here. There's another paralyzing fear. You may be afraid your husband will lose his position. You are thinking of the disgrace and the hard times which will befall you and the children. This is an experience. This experience may come to you, or you may have already had it several times. Happened to me quite a few times, actually. Should it happen again, regard it in a different light. Maybe it will prove a blessing. It may convince your husband he wants to stop drinking forever, and now you know that he can stop if he will. Time after time, this apparent calamity has been a boon to use. The rest of the sentence is highlighted orange. It says, for it opened up a path which led to the discovery of God. I can't tell you how many jobs I lost to my drug addiction and alcoholism or theft or whatever debauchery that I was bringing to the establishment. You know, those were stepping stones for me to get well. Sure, were there hard times it came as the result of losing that financial security? Yeah, but it was absolutely necessary. And I don't regret having gone through any of that. I just don't. And, you know, by the hand of the 12 steps and the power of God, I've since made amends to a lot of those establishments and the living amends for, you know, the ones that I'm not able to do so. It's been a really good thing for me. And this is what can happen to your husband or wife who is struggling in this capacity. Potentially, maybe they'd lose their job. It's not the end of the world. We have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. I mean, I can't tell you how much I believe that. This sentence is going to be highlighted in orange. It says, if God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. You know, the solution to alcoholism is one of the hardest ones ever. You know, and if that one can be solved, what can't God do? You know, what can't you see happen in your life when you place yourself on a spiritual plane and give yourself to God? That second and third step, live these steps. There's nothing you can't do. Alcoholism is not a death sentence. It doesn't have to be. And relapse doesn't have to be part of anyone's program. You know, it doesn't say that anywhere in this book. You know, it just talks about the power of God via the 12 steps, and your life will get better. That's been my experience. It's been the experience of millions of people who have done this work and continue to live these steps, to live altruistically, and to continue to live and breathe on a spiritual plane. It says, we wives found that, like everyone else, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go to make up the self-centered person, and we were not above selfishness or dishonesty. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too. So it's like, wow, this is happening for him. Maybe I need to kind of, you know, get on board here, you know, do it too. I mean, it works for everyone involved, okay, when it's done. You can't just talk about it, though. You have to do it. At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought on the whole we were pretty good women, capable of being nicer if our husbands stopped drinking. But it was a silly idea that we were too good to need God. Silly. Okay? The next sentence is going to be highlighted orange. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. Okay? Remember, practicing these principles in all our affairs, not just with the alcoholic, in everything we do, in our finances, in our relations with other people, with our kids, in everything we do. And you will find that it will solve whatever problems come your way. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing will be so helpful to your husband as the radically changed attitude towards him which God will show you how to have. Go along with your husband if you possibly can. I mean, thank God for women like Lois Wilson. I mean, most women nowadays would not have stood around and dealt with Bill W.'s bullshit. They just wouldn't do it. You know, to think if she didn't stand by him and follow this program, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous may never have gotten off the ground. Just let that sink in for a minute. You know, what would happen to people like you and I? You know, it's very, very important to to really stand by your man here if you can and follow these spiritual principles also. It can only benefit your relationship, and it will really help others avert death. If you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are, of course, going to be very happy. But all problems will not be solved at once. That's important to understand. It doesn't all. Let's go ahead and highlight that orange. But all your problems will not be solved at once needs to be highlighted orange. This is an overtime deal, and this is a continuous effort deal. You know, not everything's just going to be fixed overnight. Your husband's not going to just all of a sudden become Adonis and everything's going to be perfect. That's not how it works, okay? Seed has started to sprout in a new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. There's going to be ups and downs. Stuff's going to go like this. You know, no one's life is this, no one's life is this, and no one's life is this. Okay, there's going to be ups and downs. I mean, the world doesn't change because you are now recovered. You still have to live in it. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be, you know, and that's what we have steps for. You know, I have stuff that I'm still struggling with, still working on. But believe me when I tell you that if the obsession to drink alcohol has left you, you're as recovered as you're going to be. The other stuff is just stuff that we're using the steps to work on. But how cool is it to not have to wake up obsessed with alcohol? I mean, that's the problem you came to the table with. That's the problem your husband has. In due time, with vigilance and vigilance and hard work and diligence, that other stuff will get to go as well. You know, your life will be better in all facets of your life. Okay? So, the faith and sincerity of both you and your husband will be put to the test. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. This is designed for living. This is how it works. The day-to-day parts of your lives, things that come up, good things, bad things, this is what happens, okay? You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. Instead, you will capitalize them. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentments. Your husband will sometimes be unreasonable, and you will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunder clouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your husband. Often you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. This next sentence is going to be highlighted orange. It says, never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. Okay? Kills more alcoholics than anything else. Okay, it's the number one offender. The last thing we want is any resentments festering, brewing, none of that. We want to really try our best to stay clear of, feeding different resentments in this capacity. We do not mean that you have to agree with your husband wherever there is an honest difference of opinion. Just be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit. So we're going to go ahead and stop there today. We're going to finish it next week. This is just a couple more pages for 2 wives. We're going to break it up into 3 parts. My dogs are annoying me and my cat won't stop meowing, so I'm going to go address those issues because as the result of working these steps, I'm able to do so today. So, as always, it's very important to go over the work. Make sure you're having a good understanding of what it is that this chapter to wives is saying. The breakdown of what it is, how we're, dealing with the husband, what kind of husband you have, what category he may fall under, the things that are going to do, to be beneficial to you and your family around working with your husband. These are all super important things. Next week we'll finish a chapter, and then we'll move on. I'm thinking by the end of the year we'll have this program finished. Once again, it's always very important to pay attention to what's happening around you, to pay it forward, and to rely on God and not on other people. That is a surefire way to stay recovered in this capacity and, have these promises continue to manifest in your life. Until next week, thank you for allowing me to serve. My name is Dexter. I'm a recovered drug addict alcoholic. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and namaste.